Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always
is Lady Shasha, Mistress of the Snark, coming to you live and direct from sunny Orlando, Florida.
and this is a horror movie podcast. We get together, we talk about contemporary and VOD and newish horror films. It's a terrible intro, but that's me again. That's what we do. We watch a movie, we talk about it. So that's simple. And coming up on today's show, we are going to be talking about Escape Room Tournament of Champions. Although, on IMDb, it just says Escape Room 2, which means I think in the UK, they just called it Escape Room 2. I think they decided not to do the stupid subtitle. They thought, no, we're just going to go with the number. Too many movies are scared to go with the number. The sequels are scared of numbers now. It sickens me. It sickens me.
I prefer the numbers because trying to remember, specifically the Hellraiser sequels.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to remember which one is which because they're not numbered. They just have different names. It's irritating.
Yeah, everyone thinks they're too good. They weren't the first to do it, but I kind of blame Lord of the Rings for this mentality. Everyone after Lord of the Rings, everyone just wanted the colon, something else. No.
We could also blame just a teeny bit Halloween Season of the Witch for the sub title.
That wasn't the first to do that, was it?
That's the earliest one I can remember. It's Halloween Season of the Witch.
Oh, it's Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Oh, my bad.
There's a 3 in there.
There is a 3. Okay.
I think technically no one ever remembers this, but technically Friday the 13th 4 doesn't actually say 4 in the title. It's just Friday the 13th, the final chapter. It goes back to having numbers after that, but 5. Actually, we don't go back to numbers till 6, but definitely it goes back to numbers at 6. But yes.
And then it goes away from the numbers again when it does H2O and then Resurrection.
That's Halloween. You've jumped back to another franchise.
Oh, sorry. They're all mixed together in my head.
I thought we were going to say Jason Goes to Hell, which would have been weird. I expected you to go with that sense. But anyway, so Escape Room, Tournament of Champions. This is the second Escape Room. Me and Tim did the first one on Screams when it came out, like, I don't know, 2 years ago, whenever that hit. And you hadn't seen the first one. You watched the first one as well for the sake of watching the second one.
I watched it last night, and I liked it better than I thought I would. I purposely watched last night because one of my pet peeves is when a reviewer reviews a sequel to a movie without having seen the original. That just irritates me.
Oh, I'm meticulous. On the other shows, regardless of how bad and how unnecessary some of the prior films might be, I will insist and go through all of them before we do the new. Typically, there's probably a couple of exceptions, but by and large, that's the rule. The first Escape Room, like, I thought was a fun concept that was a bit too much of a Sony movie. It was they wanted to be cool, it wanted to feel slick, and the ending was a bit weird, but there was some fun to have in the actual escape rooms themselves. It'd have been nice if I cared about the characters more. It'd have been nice if it was, I feel like you either go total fun schlock, which I feel like the movie's desperate to not do. It's desperate to take itself a little too seriously, or you give me better characters and maybe more like smarter rooms that are actually like fun to puzzle out with the characters rather than the silly over the top kind of like CG spectacle of, oh, now the floor's falling away and like over the top stuff like that. So
or give us a little bit more carnage, because part of this reminded me of Cube, but Cube was a bit more gory.
Oh sure, yeah. I think just a little bit more, I don't know, so it's maybe like escape rooms where you could actually solve it with the characters, whereas I feel like the actual puzzles in both the first and the second escape room, like, you couldn't just solve that on your own as a viewer. They have to find things and explain ridiculous ideas and ridiculous thoughts they have, otherwise you would never get to it because they're so obtuse and so weird. So something where you could actually, not be too predictable, but something where if you are paying attention you might get the solutions first, or you might be able to. Yeah, so that'd be something that would make it more fun to play along with. But I thought the first one was very watchable, but not a great movie. Just a very watchable thing.
I agree.
That was it. So that's where I was in the first one. Escape Room 2, Tournament of Champions. And don't worry, they have that moment in this movie You know, so everyone made fun of this when the first Suicide Squad movie came out. Everyone made fun of Will Smith in the trailer for the moment where he goes, "Well, I guess it's some kind of Suicide Squad." Like, right? Everyone made fun of that. This movie has that for its subtitle.
Yes. I couldn't believe that actually happened. Like when there's a character saying, "What are we in some type of tournament of champions?" I said, "No.
That
Why did you do that?"
the Suicide Squad line looks alright compared to this one. No one in their right mind would phrase this way.
And it doesn't even make sense for her to say that.
Oh, and it was in the trailer, which is probably why it's in the movie, because they wanted to put it in the trailer to give it the you know, your big moment, your big money making moment. So obviously we're going to start spoiler free, but it is worth mentioning that characters in this are survivors. Some of them, not all of them, obviously, but some of them are survivors from the first movie. So inherently, in talking about this at all, we are going to have to spoil a little bit, at least, of the outcome of the first one. So, you know, keep that in mind. But we are otherwise starting spoiler free for Escape Room 2. So, the basic gist of this, I mean, it's kind of in the title, but basically, our main character survived the last one. I'm going to keep calling her Julie because that was a character in Lost in Space, but.
Zoe.
Zoe, yeah.
Yes.
Zoe and Ben, who survived the first movie, she's still scared of flying, and she wants to uncover and prove that this evil company's doing this to people. And they drive to New York because she doesn't want to fly, to try and find the headquarters, take photos, do whatever. And almost immediately, there's a plant character, right? He's meant to be a junkie, but he's really there to lure them into a trap onto the subway. And of course, this subway train is actually part of an escape room, which then transitions to other escape rooms. And much like the first one, you've got a group of characters. The only gimmick this time is that all the people in it are all people who won previous. It's this Hunger Games. It's the second Hunger Games logic of it's all the previous winners. Well, that's maybe not all. I mean, I don't know. I mean, given how violent some of these traps are, I have to suspect there's been a lot of these games where no one survived. Because they very narrowly make it out in some of these. But that is the basic gist. I mean, I remember from the trailer, because I did see the trailer, I remember thinking they showed too much just because they showed me too many of the games. Like, it'd have been nice to get to like some of the later ones and not be, because there's one that's a fake out where you think they've got out, and I won't say what it is, but like this was in the trailer. You showed them realizing they weren't out yet in the trailer. So what are you doing?
I'm glad I didn't watch the trailer, but even with that, I knew that they weren't out because of how many levels they went down in the elevator.
Oh sure,
there's no way that would be out when you went down so many levels.
And it was also too early as well. You know, in runtime. I mean, if you want to keep your thinking hat on, like, we got 35 minutes left. There's no way you're out into the world yet. So, yeah, that's the basic gist of it. So I will ask the question, Shasha, what did you think of Escape Room Tournament of Champions?
It felt like those movies that come on the Sci-Fi Channel on Saturday. That's what it felt like. I mean, I'm not mad at it. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't exactly good either. It was just okay.
Yeah, I think exactly what I said about the first one applies. I mean, I think I might have liked this one slightly, and I do mean slightly, like a slither more, just because it kind of got to ignore. Like we got to the actual games a bit quicker, it felt like, and it didn't need to do as much. But even though I do think the ending, like, it feels too easy, which is actually kind of the point. That does come up that it is a bit too easy, but it did kind of feel like, oh, that's it, that's the climax. There's nothing else. But I did feel like it got to the games quicker, and I think because all the characters knew what they were in, I kind of liked that we didn't have to go through them all realizing the scenario they're in. Like, that was very quick because they'd all been through this before, so immediately they're all like, oh, this is like an escape room, oh, let's try and figure it out. Whereas in the first one, there's a lot of, are we sure this is real, guys? Are we sure this is real? Like, what, like, there was a lot of that.
I remember I wrote my notes for the first one. This one guy, the corporate guy, he kept on running to the doors, finding it locked and banging on them. He did this 3 times. I'm like, after the first time it didn't work, and in the second room it doesn't work. Why are you in the third room trying the same thing that previously did not work 2 times?
Yeah, it got a little bit frustrating, and I think
Hmm.
because of that, I'd say this one's slightly better. But otherwise, it's surprisingly consistent in the sense that I still think it's very watchable. I don't regret
Hmm.
watching either movie, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend. Like, I mean, they're like if they're on a streaming service or they're on TV or something, yeah, they're a
Hmm.
fine thing to have on, you know. But that's like the extent. Like, they're still Sony movies. They still try to be slick. We can't just have a creepy room that has a fun puzzle that we can solve along with
Hmm.
them. It has to be, oh no, the floor is going to like melt, and there's going to be like an elaborate CG laser system. I mean, the laser one's kind of fun. Not to get
Hmm.
spoilery, but but they are overly sillily complex in a way
Hmm.
that means you can't play the game with it. And in a way, like, I don't want to give Saw too much credit, but at least the not all the Saws, but the first Saw,
Hmm.
they're at least like they set up things in the room where if you're trying to think about it, you can maybe start to predict certain things or start to think about what at
Hmm.
least what various elements or clues mean. But in this, like, they have to go through like 4 or 5 rooms, whatever it is. So every time they go into a room, it's like, oh, there's an anchor, and there's a postcard, and there's a metal detector over there, and it's like, but they have to like go through boom, boom, boom. There's no time to even possibly think, and they just find items that completely introduce new ideas like halfway through the escape rooms, which isn't
Hmm.
unlike an actual escape room, but as a movie, it's hard to like engage just because it's just you know
Also, it seemed like in this one, the escape rooms weren't tied to the individuals. In the first one, each escape room was based off of uh, a trauma that one of the participants survived.
yeah, that's
In
something
this
that
one, I didn't see the connections in the, or maybe I missed it, but I didn't see the connections.
There's an explanation towards the end what the theme was, but
Oh,
uh,
yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember what it was. I
yeah,
won't say it till we get to the spoiler part.
yeah. But Zoe questions that as well. She kind of, it's actually
Hmm.
worth mentioning that I would not look at the IMDb cast list for this because there are spoilers in it. Uh,
Oh, wow.
so I would ignore looking at IMDb
Hmm.
for this one. Not that you're going to be heartbroken, I think, if you spoil Escape Room 2,
Hmm.
but if you care about Escape Room 2 and you want to experience all the twists and turns and the reveals, then I would not look at the IMDb list. Uh,
Also, I wonder why Sony is so tied to PG-13. Because they did the same thing with Venom, and I think that the new Venom, if I'm not mistaken, is also gonna be PG-13. I don't know why they feel so, like, tied to this PG-13.
uh, I mean, it goes back into what I was because I think Sony movies all have this same feel. They all have
Mhm,
this like sort of wannabe, we want to be cool and slick, but their movies feel kind of hollow. And I would
mhm,
describe these two movies like that. I would describe Venom like that. I would describe
mhm,
the movie they put out. Like, I think they did Life. I think
mhm,
they did. Like, I feel like they have a feel. Bloodshot, I think, was Sony, and that again, same kind of feel. It's a Sony movie.
mhm,
Uh, and maybe it was with that. Like, they want the teenage crowd. Like, oh, we're teenage friendly. We're cool. We're something that 13-year-olds are going to think are awesome and badass. But anyone who's
mhm.
over 16 is going to look at it and go, oh, this is kind of shit. Maybe not the worst thing ever, but kind of shit. Like I said, though, I think because we don't have to go through the what is like, is this real, is all that stuff, I think because of that the characters are probably slightly more likable in this one, and they're not great characters, but at least they get to the point quicker,
Mhm.
and they each have their thing, their gimmick, although one of them, which feels like a big deal, doesn't really play into it as much as I thought it would, uh which is a bit strange, but it's fine. This is such a hard one to kind of. I mean, I feel like most of the conversation is going to be discussing each room more than anything else.
Mhm.
Uh, but I
Oh,
will say it's one of those concepts where, because they want the like, it's a movie is never going to have like a proper happy ending because it. And I know a lot of horror movies don't, and there's a lot of horror movies that shouldn't have a happy ending, and I'm glad they go for a downer ending or whatever. But I feel like this, along with the Saw movies that want to be cool and slick and we've got twists, it just kind
mhm.
of feels a little bit mean spirited. Like, no matter what, we're going to do this thing at the end so we can cut to black on this badass moment. Well, they think it's badass. It's actually just kind of like, yeah. Every horror movie since the early 2000s has been kind of doing this type of ending.
Mhm.
It's we've been there. we've done that. Thank you and
And
goodbye.
also, it doesn't make you care about the characters other than basically Zoe and Ben. I think in the first one, it takes longer to get to the escape rooms because you get a little bit of a backstory behind the
Mm.
characters. Like you see the corporate dude being all corporate and rude, and then you see Ben at his grocery store job, and you see Zoe being too shy to raise her hand in class. With this, all the characters, you basically just meet them on a train, and they say like maybe one sentence about who they were.
Yeah, it's like I get a wife. That's one guy.
Yeah.
Uh, one is
He
like
used to
an
be a priest.
influencer. One used to be a priest. Yeah, that's it.
Mhm,
And he's an alcoholic now because I mean, going through an escape room, you know, made him question everything, and now he's all
mhm.
he's all tormented. One is just well, just a
I think they if they revealed later that she had a,
well, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
mhm,
That's why I'm struggling because I'm like, other than that, she doesn't really have anything to describe her.
yeah,
She's a chick. She's there.
mhm,
That's basically her whole thing. Uh, and that's basically it. There's not a lot to them. I mean, admittedly, I don't necessarily need there to be a lot to them. It's again, it's back to this like either you go full
mhm,
schlock and then it's okay that they're kind of thin characters. Just make them memorable by having they're each of them their own trait, and that's fine. And they're just archetypes, whatever. Or you want to be a serious movie and you give us good characters that we care about that
mhm,
have some arcs, some at least make us care about them a little bit. Um, and it kind of falls in the middle of both of those things, and sadly, which is kind of the biggest failing of probably this and the first movie.
mhm,
Uh, but it's not a bad. I'll say this: it's like just under 90 minutes. It doesn't
mhm,
waste time. It doesn't pretend that it's high art, and at least that I can say. I can say at least as stupid and as cool as it's trying to be, which comes off a bit try hard. It doesn't at least insult my intelligence, but try to pretend anything else. Like it doesn't. I don't know. Like there's some movies you watch that you think you're making gold here, and this isn't gold. this is fodder. This is fodder which will be in theaters, but will ultimately live on the bottom end of a streaming service somewhere.
mhm.
That people will stumble onto occasionally. So
I would love to know what young people think of this movie because it's I'm guessing it's mostly meant for them. So I wonder, well, actually, anybody who's watching this that might be Gen Z, what do you think of these type of movies? If you're like 13, 14, 15 years old, is this like, are they reaching you? I want to know.
I'm glad you specify because I was about to say you can ask me. You can just ask me what I think of it.
No, you're at least a senior in high school. I
Mm.
should know as a 24-year-old graduate student. I
Oh
should know.
yes, yes. As a 24-year-old, you should know.
Yeah,
Yes.
my
Um,
grandfather used to say he was 24 his whole life. Every time I asked him how old he was, he always said he was 24.
I think what he meant was a multiple of 24. um, so yeah, it's very watchable. It's watchable fluff. Um,
Mhm,
some people might attach to it a little bit more and want to revisit it because there's definitely some fluff, cheesy things in the past that I've attached to that I do go back to. I don't
mhm,
think this is that for me, but much like the first one, I didn't hate watching it. Like it was fine, like to have on. I wasn't miserable about it. Which compared to some of the things we watch for this show and
mhm,
the stuff that comes out, that is saying something at least. So,
mhm.
so there you go. Let's go spoilers. Let's say spoiler warning, and we can get into the meat of it. So there are things that do annoy me right early on, which is Zoe's at her therapist and she's saying, "Oh, you're being paranoid. Like everything's a clue." And she starts like saying, "This pen's a clue to you. This book's a clue to you. This bag's a clue to you." And I just sort of groaned and went, "At the end of the movie, they're going to be clues," and I'm going to be so annoyed at this.
I just thought it was the worst therapist ever. Like, this is not how you deal with trauma. I'm pretty sure that's not how you treat it.
Get back in a plane. Don't be a
Mhm,
scaredy cat. Especially like she sort of gives a shit for like suggesting to drive to New York because she's scared of flying. I'm like, I mean, she can drive. It's not like she's saying she wants to drive across the Atlantic.
mhm.
She can drive to another state, it's fine. Like, it's a perfectly normal thing to do.
And it's understandable why she has a fear of flying. She was literally in a plane crash where everyone died except her. That's an extreme trauma. That's that is a reason to have a fear of flying. I mean, it's not irrational on her part.
Yeah. There's a couple of scenes with her and Ben where there's almost a tease that maybe it could get romantic. They never really go down that path, but it's still open
Mhm.
for the future. But it's just to show that, hey, they kind of have this shared trauma together. They both survived this
Mhm.
thing, so they kind of like want each other around. Like I said earlier, they very quickly get into a chase with a mugger. They end up
Mhm.
on the train, and then the train disconnects and ends up on its own. And it turns out that this is an escape room, and the
Mhm.
escape room number one, the train. So it's a subway car which is electrified. So all the poles, all the stuff that you get in the subway, all of that is like you get a shock if they touch it, and it sort of gradually gets more intense as it
Mhm.
goes on. Uh, the actual like solving things, it comes down to pulling the right, uh, you know, hand pulley things. What do you
Mhm.
call it? The things you hold to just stand up for your
Mhm.
balance. Uh, because they pull them, they get tokens. There's a token thing at the front of the train, and they put that in, and eventually that'll open a trap door. And they figure out which ones to pull because there's letters missing on some of the posters and the adverts on the subway. Um, I guess this is what I talk about when it's like it's so over the top, because by the time you get to the end of this escape room, the amount of like electricity you can see on the screen that they're like ducking and
Mhm.
diving from is just so ridiculous that it's like, how are any of you like alive? Like, you should all be dead with the amount of like
Yeah, my
trappings.
criticism of this movie would be the first escape room, those were feasible in how they were built. Like, okay, I could see someone could build that hot room, and I could see somebody could build the cold room. As a matter of fact, we have a place in Orlando called the Ice Bar. That's literally a bar that's made out of ice, and everything in there is made out of ice, even the shot glasses. So when you go in from, the usual 80-degree weather here, you have to put on winter clothes to go into the ice bar. So that's completely able to be done. But these, how did they make lightning in a room? I don't want to know how to make the lightning bolts in the room. I'm sure there's probably a way of doing it, but on that level, I don't know. It didn't seem feasible.
I mean, I can buy, you can take a big metal container and have it sparking like that, like
Yeah,
all
and you
over it.
can electrify the metal things with
Yeah,
the
like
actual little lightning bolts.
I get all that. It's the amount of time that they survive inside whilst
Mhm.
dodging all of this electricity. I feel like there's a certain point where they just all be cooked, and
Mhm.
that's just how it is. But um, because I think when it comes to stuff like this, like the small parts of logic that I like is like, okay, do we have anything that we can use to touch the metal, right? So they find like a bit of rubber, and there's like, oh, okay, right. So we got this sheet of rubber. We can rip that up, and we can use that for the handles. Those things are what I like in movies with concepts like this, because it's, oh, this is problem solving that I, the viewer, understand completely the logic of, and go, I would probably think of that in this situation. Um, but a lot of the leaps they take, it's like, I almost don't believe anyone would survive any of these rooms, because the logic of how they figure out, like, and I know escape rooms are meant to be a little obtuse, that's part of the fun, but the time constraints they have in these rooms, it's like, oh, you got 5 minutes till you're all frightened to death. Like, you have to like go super fast.
Mhm.
All of that just makes it really hard to kind of swallow. Uh, that said, it's not completely unentertaining in the sense that they are getting more frantic as they go. They're trying to figure things out. Um, eh, there is this realization as it's happening that they're all previous players of the game, so they're all kind of like freaking out. And I think that's the most interesting thing about the rest of the characters, is how they all react. Like, some of them start crying, some of them get really scared. Is they
Mhm.
all? You do get the sense that this is traumatic for all of them, that they're back having to do this again. It's not a big positive, because it's not something that really continues that much throughout the movie. But at least in the opening like couple of minutes of realization, there's a variety of reactions that are interesting. But the one thing, the blonde woman, who we didn't really have anything to describe her with, because her one
Mhm.
real trait comes later, I will say she did kind of try to comfort the guy who was freaking out, and it kind of felt like she was maybe going to be shown as more of like a a cool headed leader type character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think the rest of the movie really gave me that, but at least in that one moment, I thought, oh, maybe they're actually starting to set up some character traits for these people, and it, they didn't really, but the priest's whole thing was like, why did I survive? I have survivor's guilt. You know what? I will let my faith help me like get other people through these traps by just taking blind leaps, which is going to land them at a bother soon. But yeah, so that was the first room. It was okay. They get it was fine. Probably I don't know, would you agree the next one's the best, the bank lobby?
I think that was the hardest one to pass.
Hardest,
And it
okay.
reminded me of a specific scene in Resident Evil, which even more so, seeing as they had to take an elevator down to Raccoon City,
no,
underneath Raccoon City anyways.
don't bring up the Resident Evil movie. Don't. I hate it. I hate those
I don't
movies.
hate it. I like the first one.
No, it sucks.
It had zombie dogs. You don't see those every day.
There's tons of zombie dogs in the games, which are much better.
Mm-hmm.
The stupid Alice is not even in the games.
Oh yeah, Alice is not in the games. Alice is just a figment of her husband's imagination because it's his fault. The director of the Resident Evil movies, he keeps putting his wife as the lead, and she's not a great actress, and she's really horrible at doing her coordinated stunts. Like, and she doesn't sell any of these punches.
You don't have to sell me on the horrors of Paul W.S. Anderson. I am well aware of the dire straits of what he represents. He's a horrible filmmaker, and I do not wish to discuss Resident Evil movies any longer. Thank you very much. There's a new one coming out, which I'm not particularly happy about. But
really,
well, it's not with him.
Oh my God,
no.
they need to let the series die.
No, it's a reboot though. It's not with him, so at least it's
okay.
It's not Alice. It's not that. It's they got their 6 movie. I can't believe that went 6 movies with that crappy. Oh, anyway, yeah. So room number 2, the bank lobby. So this one, they come in and there's like a checkered pattern floor, kind of, not right at the entrance, but like from the sort of big central aisle where there's like the counters on both sides. And the idea is that some of them are pressure plates and that they will trigger a laser grid, which isn't just, if you think of anyone sneaking into like a vault or something and there's lasers, usually it's just like an alarm trigger. Here they're actually lasers that are going to cut their skin, so it's like super dangerous. Hence the comparison to the laser sequences from Cube and another film which will not be named. In fact, Shasha's got a demerit for bringing up a Paul Anderson movie. So it's okay, all right. You give them the rules, and they're trying to figure out which ones they can step on, and this is the sort of thing where like some of the solutions here are like, the 3 clocks in the room say this, and there's this message says, follow the hour by hour, and that gives them the first like half of the path, the safe path. I think what I liked about this one, and maybe why I think it was my favorite, is because it gave everyone something to do. They kind of split up into different teams because there was 2 sides of the room that had different clues, and then the priest, he was on his own in the middle, and he ended up in the one who was trying to walk down the thing. And then halfway down, when they only because that clue only gave them half of the path, he then decided to just start taking leaps of faith and taking steps, and he got a little bit far with it, but ultimately, almost got himself killed. In fact, honestly, the only disappointment I really have of this scene, other than that, I wish that the clues were more, play along worldly, would be that no one gets sliced. Like, I was really expecting someone to fall into the lasers and get properly sliced.
But PG-13.
But even if you do it off camera, though, like, it's like someone starts to fall, you cut to the reaction, and you just hear a just something like that. But they didn't even do that. So that was a bit of a shame. But yes, and there's a lot of like moments where someone has to stay back and read out the path, and Zoe ends up like only getting out in the nick of time because she's the one who's like giving them the path, and then she has to follow the breadcrumbs or lollipops in this case that they've left for her on the squares. But I think I like this one the most because, unlike some of the other ones, it felt like a real place. And obviously, it's not. It's one they've built, but it does look like a real bank, or an equivalent to that, as opposed to the next one, which has like an almost like Truman Show esque, like here's an ocean backdrop for this beach set, which although I do appreciate how fake that next one looks, because I remember in the first one kind of feeling a little bit like, oh, this like frozen lake place, it feels super realistic, and I'm like, did they really just build this in a room somewhere? At least this beach one they go to next does genuinely feel like a set. It feels like there's like the fake qualities of it are there and intentional, and like I'm like, okay, this does feel like something that a team has built, as opposed to, oh, we're out in I mean, I'm sure the frozen lake was a set. I'm sure it was literally a movie set, but in the context of this being super convincing and all that, so yeah. What did you think of the beach? Room number 3, the beach.
The beach room was okay. It wasn't my favorite though. But the next room probably would have been my favorite if they did one thing. I'll tell you when we get to it. But I did like the concept of the beach room with the lighthouse and the other little shack there and refrigerator.
I think I didn't like the clues as much, but I did like the idea of it being so themed. Like, there's different areas. Like, there's a little shack with, you say, there's the lighthouse. There's the pile of like boats, like in rubble and stuff. There's like spades and buckets and beach things out in the sand. And I think that the thing that kind of killed this one a little bit for me is I thought the visual effect of whatever they were doing to the sand to kind of turn it into quicksand looked really weird. It didn't look natural. It looked, I don't know, there was like a CG kind of quality to it. They just looked a bit weird. So that kind of stuck out to me, and because of that, it was a bit odd. But yeah, so there was a death in the first room. The guy who was upset that he wasn't getting back to his wife, he died in the first room. I did like that they kind of surprised us by not killing anyone in the second room. That was a bit of a swerve. And the sand in the beach room, it looks like blonde lady's about to die because she falls into the sand and sinks. But then our priest man decides to tie a rope to his waist and jump down after her, and he saves her. But then as he's trying to come back up, the rope snaps and he dies. So he got to sacrifice himself for someone. I'm sure he's very happy about that. Except
The
he's
one
dead.
thing that kind of bugged me was why Ben was moving so slowly. Like, his ankle wasn't broken this time, and he just always, everything he did just seemed like at half speed. And I know it was meant for there to build up tension, but it wasn't believable.
Yeah, there's definitely moments where it feels like there's some characters who are just standing and watching other characters do something, and it kind of feels like there's a lot of stuff to check in here. You could just be at least looking at things to see if there's other clues or something. So I think the beach one was a really fun concept, but I think the actual trap of the sand sort of like turning into this sinking quicksand somehow, like however they've triggered that, I felt too fantastical, and it didn't feel like a trap that, like, admittedly the lasers are over the top, sure, but at least there's a simple logic to them that we understand, right? There's a laser, there's a straight line, and you can't hit that line and it'll cut you, and there's a lot of them, so that becomes super dangerous. And yeah, it's super movie because the end of that last room is Zoe literally running from the grid of lasers turning on. It's like chasing her down the room, so it's super Hollywood nonsense. Not in a bad way necessarily, but it is super Hollywood nonsense.
It's one step away from the slow walk with the explosion behind you.
Oh sure, yeah. In many ways, it's almost the exact opposite of that when you think about it. So yeah, so the beach is a nice concept. There's 2 exits here. Zoe thinks she's found like a super secret one that'll get them out of the game, but you're just like, nah, this is not that at all. It looks like Ben also falls to his death in here. He falls into the sand. It feels a bit early though, which is why I was expecting shenanigans later on. The next one they end up in though, because the other woman, the influencer, she goes out the original exit, and she's like missing for a little bit, and it's just Zoe and the blonde woman. Uh, at this point, though, we've seen the blonde woman like put her hand on the burning stove, and she didn't react to it. So I was like, oh, okay, she doesn't feel pain. Maybe that was like because at the start of the movie they all say what the gimmick. Because if you remember in the first movie, Zoe's room was that everyone there was a sole survivor. That was the gimmick of
Hmm.
that group of people. The priest was just a bunch of priests.
Hmm.
Well, their faith get them through it. Um, but notably, she never said what hers was, and it's not until later it turns out that she just doesn't feel pain. She doesn't have the nerve endings or whatever. So that you know, I thought they were going to do more with that. I thought that in the next room they get to, which is they think they're outside, they think they're on a New York street. Oh no, it's a big LED screen for like the it's actually a set again. And the gimmick in this room, and they run into the other woman as well here, is that every time the timer runs down on the traffic lights, it rains acid, and they have
Hmm.
to try and find cover. But the cover they have are like umbrellas and the little
Awning.
the awnings in front of the stores. They are melting, and they're only good for a couple of showers before they're just gone. So they're trying to get into the phone booth. They're trying to get into the taxi cab. They're trying to find a key. I think I like the concept of this one again.
Hmm.
I like that compared to the previous ones, there's this real time crunch to it. But I almost felt like the clues should have been even simpler to compensate for the fact that it was meant to be so quick, because it was
Hmm.
hard to kind of swallow certain things. Um, I did not expect them to kill off the two other characters in this scene. They do this cruel thing that when they kind of figure things out, Zoe goes into the cab, but the door immediately shuts behind her, and then the phone booth that the other two were hiding in shuts behind them when they run for the car. And I thought that they were going to do something here where the blonde woman, because she couldn't feel pain, was going to cover the other woman as like a sacrifice. I thought that's what they were going to do with it, because she's like,
Hmm.
oh, she'll still die. Like it's not going to be like she's like immune to like the effects of it, but at least she won't be in pain as she's sacrificing herself, and that'll be like her sort of doing something nice for the other person. But instead, she says, "It's okay, don't react," so they don't give the audience their sick satisfaction, and then we just get the implication that they both get melted.
Yeah, and this would have been my favorite room if they had showed them melting. Like I love a good melt effect. Like go bring in the practical effects people and show them melting, and it would have been great.
Yeah, I love how your complaints of the movie boiled down to I want to see someone sliced in half. I want to see someone melted. I want to
Yes,
see someone get fried with electricity.
yes.
I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, there's
Mhm.
a fine complaint to have, honestly. Um, which
It
I,
kind of reminds me a little bit of like when the dream sequences in Nightmare on Elm Street. Like when when those people get messed up, they get messed up. I remember one Nightmare on Elm Street, I want to say it was part 5, where he fed this girl to death and her cheeks were like bursting. Like I like the ridiculousness of that. Like if you're going to do this type of movie, make it ridiculous.
I think it would be okay that there was no gory or like grimy demises if it was more intricate and the puzzling was actually really fun to follow along with and solve. I think
Hmm.
that would, because you would be getting that out of it instead, so it wouldn't really be a big deal. You don't get the nasty deaths necessarily, but because
I
the
agree.
the puzzling is like so convoluted that you can't really play along with it, you don't get the same satisfaction, and therefore you're looking for the other thing that you want instead, which is the gore effects, and then you don't get that
Hmm.
either, and that kind of sucks. So, uh, but yeah. So it turns out this entire game uh, was based on, and we never even mentioned this, but the movie starts with a previously on Escape Room.
Hmm.
We get like a whole montage of the first movie and kind of explaining everything. And it turns out that Deborah Ann Will's character from the first movie is alive. We thought she fell to her death, but it turned out they had her on a crash pad and they forced her to design this game. And it's the theme is that it's the day she spent with her daughter once, her daughter that passed away. Oh no, she's not passed away. She thought she was dead. It turned out they kidnapped her and they forced her to make the game or they'd hurt her daughter. Um, and now they want Zoe to design the next game, which is why they had no intentions of letting the others live. They wanted this all just to be like, no, this is all just to get her to this point where she's going to agree to do this. So this final room here isn't actually a game room, really. It's just a room. And the whole point of it is that Ben's not dead. Ben also was not killed. He is now in a tank, though, in front of them, and he's going to drown if she doesn't agree to build the next game. But she tells him to piss off. And it just kind of becomes this, how can we try and get him out of this tank? At first, Deborah Ann Wheel's character, Amanda, she is too scared to fight back, but then she eventually joins in. I mean, no one really cares that much. Her popping up randomly here towards the end, she wasn't really dead, was a very Saw-like twist, I thought. It felt like, oh, this is in like Saw 4, 5, or 6, when someone who you thought was dead from the previous movie just shows up for no reason. And it's like, okay, I guess she was the biggest star in the first one, because she'd been on a couple of big TV shows, so she was like the name. So I guess that was a big deal to have her come back, but I think maybe they were overestimating the attachment that any of us had to characters in that first movie.
I'm not even that attached to Zoe.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I like her. I like that her character gave us a different take, because so often in horror movies, women of color always the sassy black friend, the sassy Asian friend, the sassy Latina friend. So it was great to see this woman of color who is a little nerdy, who's a little bit introverted and shy. I like that.
Yeah, no, I think her performance is good. I liked her on Lost in Space, so I kind of like Zoe just because the actress is good, and I like the actress. But the character herself doesn't really have a whole lot going. She has more than the other character because she's the main character, so they give her a bit more. She actually has, like, a fear, and she has something to get over, and she has the most characterization of anyone. But like everyone else is, kind of just like a one note character with a one purpose, depending on what their role is. So yeah, no, it is true. It was worth pointing out that we do have a lead character who is of color, and it shouldn't be a tally thing, but it's been so one-sided for so long that you kind of have to point it out. You kind of have to celebrate it a little bit when it does happen, even when it is in a just okay movie.
And she's not a stereotype. She's an actual, there's women of color. We have different personalities. We're not always the sassy best friend.
Yeah. So that's nice. I mean, there's not a lot of positives to give, so we're looking for them where they are. And if nothing else, I will say that her relationship with Ben, which is like, it might turn romantic at some point, there's definitely like a shared trauma there, is that also feels at least a little unconventional compared to most horror movies. So I guess points for that too. This friendship is a little unique. Yeah, actually, there's a line early on that almost felt like it was trying to just cover up a plot hole, because they're on the train, they realize they've all been in games, and at one point Ben goes, wait a minute, when I thought I won, the guy that worked for the company tried to murder me straight away, as if like they don't let survivors actually live. So how are you all here? And they just kind of gloss over it by like, oh, they work in mysterious ways.
Also, it was funny that he called him vaguely European, and I'm like, he sounded pretty British to me. Like, what is vaguely European?
Well, that's like in movies or whatever, where they'll have a character who's vacationing in Europe. They'll just say Europe, like, Europe's a pretty big place with a lot of, and it's not even like it's a lot of countries people don't know about. Europe's full of really well-known countries. Like people, Americans, I'm talking about Americans specifically. Yes. Americans know France. They know Spain. They know Germany. It's not like, I don't know, like some Eastern European countries that are smaller, they might not know, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that. There's a lot of really big, well-known countries in Europe that they can specify. So that's a bit odd when they do that. So yes, vaguely European.
I can't believe he described that gentleman like that. Like, what was vague about it? I think it's pretty clear. And we have seen enough British people within even the American media. Like, everyone knows Simon Cowell, as much of a jerk as he is. we know him. Everyone knows Pierce. What's it? Pierce? Is it Pierce Morgan? I think his last name is Morgan. He's always in some controversy.
I'm not sure why you jump into these, but there's a lot of English actors that have been in many a movie for
Oh yes,
decades and
that's
decades.
true too. That's true too. You know why? Because a lot of English actors hide their accents and play American roles, and then you don't know until you see them in an interview after the movie, like, oh, I didn't know you were British.
I mean, that's true. A lot of them
Yeah.
do, but a lot,
Mhm.
there is a lot of times where they do play characters with their own, um, with their own accents.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is weird. That's a weird thing. But I felt like that was like a plot hole thing they were just trying to like sort of brush off. Like, yes,
Mhm.
we thought of that too. That technically we implied in the last movie that all the survivors get killed off anyway, and
Mhm.
they just happen to get away. But we'll cover it up. We'll cover it up quickly. This is fine. It's fine. Uh, so yeah, basically they use some gas and
Mhm.
fire to like break things down. They get out. I did kind of like that when they get out, you see like big like rooms label on the outside as this is the New York set and this is the even though
Mhm.
this place was ridiculously big and like how are they hiding something this huge? It's like this nonsense. But it does feel too easy. Like they're out.
Mhm.
They're outside, it feels far too easy. They go to the police station and they're like, hey, yeah, and it's on the news, like, oh, this secret organization's been doing this to people. There's witnesses now. The police, the FBI, the CIA, all the authorities are all looking for people and they're bringing people to justice. And I'm like, okay, this is so easy that I know they're going to do the, oh, you're still in the game, like twist right at the very
Mhm.
last scene. And sure enough, Zoe gets over her fear of flying. She wants Ben to go on the plane with her and she sees a woman who looks like her therapist but isn't, but has the book, the pen, the bag that were pointed out as clues at the start of the movie, and then the voice comes on the plane and says, "Thank you for flying Air, whatever the company that does this game is," and it's like you're not out of the game until we say you are, like kind of thing.
Mhm.
So now they're on the plane, and if there's an escape room 3, if they do a third one, somehow they're going to have to start it with them on a plane, uh,
Mhm.
which I assume took off. It felt like it. I mean, but then maybe it's just simulating things. But I don't know. Like, how many of these passengers are innocent people, and how many are working for the company? Like, that's a lot of players. If this is still an escape room style thing, uh, so I don't know. The ending's just like it's eye rolling. I mean, it's not even disappointing because
Mhm.
you kind of expect a shitty ending like this, but it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, fine, whatever.
And then the subplot with the daughter, where the daughter's, I guess she's locked in a room. She's being forced to make these traps, and Zoe has to help her escape. And it almost was like a Ring type of situation where she finally helps her escape, and it turns out that the daughter is more evil than the father who was making the traps.
Wait, what do you mean?
That was the ending that was in the version that I saw. Are there 2 different versions again? Are they doing that thing like they used to do in the '80s where they would
I
have, like, a European version
No, no,
and
no,
an
no,
American version?
no. There's a theatrical cut and an extended cut, and I watched the theatrical one because it was shorter.
Oh, well, maybe I
Uh,
watched the extended one.
Wait, hold on.
I didn't notice that there was more than 1 cut.
What happened at the end of yours? What are you talking about? Like, so the last time I saw Amanda was when they escaped, and then they mentioned she was talking to the police at the police station. That's all I saw. I didn't see anything with her after that.
Oh, well, there's another scene where the daughter, like, okay, the beginning of the movie, at the beginning of your movie, did you see uh a wife who was trying to get away from her husband who
Oh
was the
no, no, none of this. No.
oh, well, this is interesting. We saw 2 different versions of the movie. At the very beginning of the escape room that I saw.
You said wait. You said daughter, and I thought you meant like Amanda's daughter who's been held captive, but we never saw her. She was just mentioned. I was like, who are you talking about?
No, in this one, they show the puzzle master, and he's pretty much super abusive, and his wife is trying to leave him. And when they first show her or show his daughter, she's in her bedroom and she's playing a puzzle game in her suitcase. And since his wife is trying to leave him, he pretty much sets up a puzzle in their home sauna. Of course, they live in this huge mansion, and she couldn't solve the puzzle in time, so she dies in the sauna. Years later, we find out that he has had his daughter imprisoned and made her make all these puzzle games because she was even better at it than him. And so at the end of the movie, Zoe finds the daughter and has to free her in order to get out of the whole maze thing. And all of the clues were from that daughter. And then when she's free, she's like, the very last line in the movie is the daughter saying, "Oh, if you thought my father's puzzles were bad, wait till you see mine." And then that's the gateway to the part 3.
Wait, so they don't go on the plane?
No,
There's actually different endings to these two cuts?
apparently
Oh
so.
my
I did not know
Jesus.
this.
Yeah, none of that's in the. I mean, presumably, if they're going to do a part 3, they'd have to follow my ending because that was the one that was released in theaters, right? You would think.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe they don't plan on doing a third one, so they changed it to something that was more of a "ha, gotcha," and that's it. Because yours sounds more like it as a part 3 setup, whereas mine just
Hmm.
feels like it's kind of ending it. And I mean, it's not impossible they could do a 3, but would
Hmm.
they do it with the same characters? Would they, would it just be a new set of people, whatever? Uh, yeah, that's bookending that you're giving me here. Is not in the theatrical cut. I had no idea what you were talking about when you started talking about that. Interesting.
Mm.
Did you like
It wouldn't
it?
be the first time Hollywood has done that. There's
Yeah.
been other movies where they have a
Well,
theatrical cut and then they have.
well, no, they do that a lot, but like
Hmm.
normally, what they add, like because it was like 7 extra minutes, and I thought, usually it's some extended dialogue and a few scenes. It's nothing that important, and normally that's true. Normally it's a few extra dialogue scenes and that's it.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just so funny that in this one occasion where I said, no, I'm watching the shorter version, that the
Hmm.
differences were so extreme that it had a different ending and this other subplot that tied into the creator of the first puzzles. Like none of that's in the theatrical cut. None of that is there. Uh, so I mean, did you like the ending in that version?
Yeah, because well, in the traps, the daughter was leaving clues. Like when they were in the beach scene, underneath they lift something up and it says SOS. And also the sandcastle is in the shape of the house that she's trapped in. Like she kept putting all these little
Ah,
clues in the escape rooms for them to try to find her because she was locked in a room also being forced to create these puzzles.
now that you mention it, I actually I guess I just assumed that the SOS was Amanda saying
Hmm.
SOS because she was the one making this puzzle. Um, but I never really thought about it past that. So I guess it makes more sense that there's someone trying to communicate something. But
Hmm. And
uh,
the daughter is the one that built the trap door to try to save Ben. She made it so that when he fell through the thing that he would be in another room, but then, her father's goons found him and still put him in another trap room. But that
do
trap
you know
room
what's
didn't
so
have
funny? But
water. Now that I think about it, the trap room that Ben got put in on my version didn't have water, it had gas.
really,
Yeah.
oh, that's weird. Yeah, do you know what's weird about hearing this is that in my version, it occurred to me that it was kind of interesting that you never see anyone who's making this or who is like making
Mhm,
this all work. But it sounds like in the version you watched, you were seeing goons like grab someone when they fell through a door and stuff like that.
mhm,
Which, because in my version, they're almost like a ghost. Like you never see anyone who's doing this to
mhm,
them. It's just the cameras looking at them. Uh, you got more of that in the first one with the guy at the end, the vaguely European man, as we previously
mhm.
mentioned.
And even with this, the puzzle master, when he's arguing with his wife, he says, "Oh, I have to finish these puzzles, you know what they'll do," which implies that he's not even the boss. He's just the person that's being paid to make the puzzle. So it's still yet to be revealed who are paying him to do these puzzles.
If they do a third one,
Hmm.
like, it's going to be weird how they handle if any of the extended stuff is actually canon. If they just re-explain it in the third one,
Hmm.
if it's because they may want to change it. Maybe that's why they took it out. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I have no idea. That is so weird, especially since it would have only put the movie up to 95 minutes instead of like 89 or whatever I watched. So
Hmm.
it's not even
Yeah,
like the show
the one that I
times.
watched was 97 minutes.
Yeah, it's not even like the show times in the theaters would have been like, oh, there's also many more show times because you cut out that 5 minutes. It's
Hmm.
that's weird. Oh well, we discovered something here at the end of the review, so that's nice. What are you rating Escape Room Tournament Champions?
Hmm. I'm going with a 5.5 because I was never bored, but it, it didn't live up to my expectations as far as, I don't know, just making you feel something. It didn't make me feel anything because without the character development, without having puzzles that were more interactive with the audience, and without gore, you're just kind of mediocre, just above mediocre. I'm going to say above mediocre. So 5.5 because it was very well done. Like I have no gripes on the technicality of how everything was shot. It's great to look at. Everything looks great. The acting was okay. Nothing was like stellar, but I couldn't say they were absolutely bad actors either. So it's definitely in the middle, that 5.5 middling range.
Yeah, I'm actually agreeing, give it the exact same score. I don't think it's enough to be called good, but it's
Hmm.
very watchable. The only thing I'll dispute in what you said there is I don't necessarily think it looked that good. I think there's a lot, far too many quick zooms and like too many
Mm,
erratic quick edits, and like we're trying to be slick and stylish and we're cool with our stuff. So it
yeah.
didn't feel like a. It felt like a music video director trying to direct a movie more than an actual filmmaker to
Mhm.
me. But
I think the reason why I say it looked good is because recently I have had the misfortune of watching one too many Wild Eye movies where it looks absolutely horrible. Like it has either a sepia filter or a green filter or a blue filter. Everything is shot in close up. It's just so compared to that, this one's okay.
it was made
Are you
an action.
familiar with Wild Eye?
Not really, no.
Oh,
And
oh.
and I think I'm happy not being familiar, to be honest, with the sounds of it.
Mm.
So,
Yeah,
uh,
they make the worst horror movies. They usually have the artwork which is borrowed from another horror movie. Like say they'll take the little crawling lady from The Last Exorcism and then they'll like call it like Amityville Possession Exorcism. And then that's their movie.
this is on you. Well, you're
Yeah.
choosing to watch these things.
Yes. Yes, I am.
This is completely on you.
I think there was
Anyway,
another one that was called like
oh,
Ouija Conjuring. It was really bad.
yeah, I think that'll do us though. I think that'll wrap up this Escape
Mhm.
Room 2 discussion. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments if you've seen it. It's always nice to
And
hear
which
from you.
version did you see?
Oh yeah, which version did you watch too? That's a good. I mean, it's actually kind of nice that we ended up accidentally watching the different cuts so we could discuss the differences. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, so yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought of the movie. Like and subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. All those things really do help out YouTube channels, so that's why they all tell you to do it. So here I am, shilling and telling you to do it. Of course, I will thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. They are Patreon producers for the month. You can support us at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble, including an extra episode every month, as well as stuff for other shows that we do on Mail Fuzz Movies and Mail Fuzz TV and et al. So do that, and also catch us on the Twitter at Screams Midnight, which is the home of all the Mail Fuzz movies, Twitter updating and whatnot. And of course, Shasha, if you would like to pimp out your channel, you
Yes,
may.
you can always find me at What Did I Just Watch? I may not look like myself a lot this month because it is October, which is my month. So if you see someone that doesn't look like me, it's probably still me. Also, Crystal and I will be back with Coast to Coast Horror every Sunday of October, and I will be on Hood Podcast on Mondays, where we talk about news of the weird all over the world because every country has a hood.
Okay, there you go. And was there anything else I need to tell you here at the end? I don't think so. But
Mm,
thank you for yeah. Now that you mention it, this will probably because another episode going out this week. So yeah, this will be the first episode in October. So yeah, happy October, everyone.
mhm.
And we'll see you soon for more spooky goodness. So thank you once again. Oh, and also since it is in October, hope you're glad that Screams After Midnight is back. Thank you,
Mhm.
everyone. So thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and if you see someone wearing the sacred mask, repeat to yourself, "Hockey season ended months ago."